Hi there, Duke fans, and welcome to episode 475 of the Duke Basketball Report podcast. We are here to chat about it was a compelling game, a game that produced a lot of nerves for Duke fans against Boston College over this weekend. I am Jason Evans. I'll be your host, your Sherpa, your guide through the wilderness today. I am joined, as I always am, by Donald Wine and Sam Klein. Donald, your life looks fairly normal today. Is that correct?
I mean, yeah, I woke up this morning and I'm going to make some breakfast later. And yeah, so it's normal. Yesterday was interesting because that game was interesting. Ready to talk about it.
Definitely. But Sam Klein, we have the advantage of being able to see each other. The listeners can't see us. Sam, where are you? What are you doing?
Well, I'm sitting in the dark because it is 6:30 in the morning where I am, which is Jackson Hole, Wyoming. I'm here in a hotel room with my friend Scott, and I need to shout out Scott's father, who listens to the show sometimes. I understand. So,
hey, I think you should shout out Scott, who doesn't mind that you're up at 6:30 in his hotel room talking.
I was also going to shout out Scott, but more importantly, his father. So, both of them, thank you for being my friend and/or listener, because Scott has had to. I think he's been privy to a couple of these shows in the past, despite not being a listener otherwise. So we thank him for that. I am skiing up here in Wyoming today, and then tomorrow we're driving up to Montana to ski there for a day, and then I'm flying back to Boston, which is why I was not in attendance for the Boston College game, which was in Chestnut Hill, a very short drive from where I live. Which was yesterday. I heard from one of my college friends who was like, "Oh, are you going to the game today?" I was like, "No, sorry." I sent him a photo.
1,500 miles away.
Yeah, exactly. I sent him a picture from the top of the hill, and he was like, "Okay, fair."
Sam, how many states have you skied in? Because I can count on one hand the number of states that I've skied in, and that number is 0.
So the number of states that I've skied in would be I got to do this out loud because I've never counted this before. So it would be Vermont, Pennsylvania. Not proud of that one. Colorado, Utah, Montana, Wyoming. Haven't skied in California yet somehow, nor New Mexico. British Columbia, does that count? It's a province.
Province.
That works.
That's 7. And then I went to Austria for a ski trip a couple of years ago. So
remember that? Yeah,
six states, a province, and one non-North American country.
I've done 5 states. The only one I can add to the list that you had, Vermont, Pennsylvania, Utah, Colorado. I think a lot of people have skied those. I've also done North Carolina.
I've also skied in New Hampshire. I totally forgot.
I forgot about that. Yes, I have as well.
It's somewhat forgettable, but I was there.
I have attempted to downhill ski one time. It was at Mount Brighton in Michigan, which Michigan ski resorts in the Lower Peninsula are usually basically old landfills that have been snowed over, and we just kind of ski down them. I went there, and they were my mom took me and my brother there to ski. They were closed for maintenance, and we said we're never coming back, and we never did.
You should give it a try again. It's fun.
I've wanted to snowboard.
Big
I just
fan.
never found the time to do it. It just is what it is.
Fair.
All right, gentlemen, I'm making the executive decision that we're going to move on from skiing because this is the Duke Basketball Report, not the Duke Ski Report. And we have to talk about a little bit of basketball. The Blue Devils played Boston College on Saturday. They win this game 65-64, literally surviving by the skin of their teeth. It was a very tight, very nerve-wracking performance from the Duke Blue Devils. We should start with our headlines. Donald, do you have a good headline for me?
I have a headline. I don't know if it's good, but it is very simple. Duke wins by a feather against BC.
That works. Sam, how about you? What's your headline?
I stole one from the listeners, so I'm going with Tom Wildermuth's headline, which is, "Hey, that's a road win," which I thought really encapsulates the big takeaway from this one.
Yes,
I think the delivery is how it makes it great too.
Hey.
Yeah.
Hey, what's up?
Tom is right. A road win. Those are big. I'm going to give you the other good headlines that I enjoyed. We as usual got a whole bevy of emails the moment the game ended from Duke fans with good headlines. I like Ken Swanner had Duke claws like an eagle for for win on the road, making reference to the Boston College Eagles there. Jim Baumgardner, scoring droughts, missed dunks, and turnovers, but Duke prevails somehow. I think Jim will probably enjoy joining us for the bad portion of this recap. Eric Blumenfeld, Eagles take it to the limit, but Duke prevails. I love that. I love that one. Take it to the limit, baby. Little Eagles reference. Chuck Westmoreland, get ready for alliteration. I'm always a fan of alliteration in headlines. Dreadful drought doesn't deter devils. Chuck, nice job there, my friend. And John Barnhill.
Wait,
my goodness,
Jason. I think with that one, I think the last part is part of the headline. So he wrote us, dreadful drought doesn't deter devils, but it almost did.
Yes, right. I left off the end here, and then the last one. Oh boy, John Barnhill. This one takes the cake. Duke pulls its chestnuts out of an open fire at BC. That's good stuff, people. I like it. I didn't do a headline because we had so many good ones from the listeners.
I don't usually like the punny ones, but I do like the chestnuts one. I appreciate that.
Yes. That one was good.
That's well done. All right, guys. So let's get to our job. Let's talk about the good, talk about the bad. We'll start with the good. By the way, it's easy to forget that Duke led this game, an ACC road game, by 14 points in the second half. Like, this was looking like a fairly comfortable win. This team was playing pretty darn well. Ryan Young and Dariq Whitehead were incredible in the first half. Both of them were just fabulous. I was all prepped. I was like, we're going to come on here and we're going to have a big debate, a big discussion about whether Ryan Young or Dariq Whitehead was the MVP of this game. And then kind of the story sort of shifted down the stretch there a little bit. But I did want to tip my hat, especially to Ryan Young, whose passing was absurdly good in this game, really created a lot of opportunities for his wins, for his teammates. Sorry. I will start with Donald, though. Donald, talk to me a little bit about what you have in the good. What was there worth building on, so to speak?
I want to give some stats because I think this stat was the stat of the game. It's the reason I think it was the difference in this game. Jason, one of your favorite stats is field goals attempted.
Duke got beat by 10.
Here we go. Duke made 21 out of 53 shots. BC made 26 out of 63 shots. So BC took 5 more shots than Duke and made 5 more.
Sorry, they took 10 more shots than Duke. Check your math, baby.
Yeah, BC took 10 more shots than Duke and made 5 more. Yeah. Both teams shot 6 for 17 from 3. So that's a wash. Duke, 17 for 19 from the free throw line. BC, 6 for 7 from the free throw line. BC made 5 more 2-pointers. Duke made 11 more free throws. Duke won by 1 point. There's your math.
Yeah, and by the way, it is worth noting Duke's free throw shooting down the stretch. Duke put out a statistic that they sent to me on the season. In the final 5 minutes of games, Duke is hitting almost 85% at the free throw line. We saw some really clutch free throws in this game when Duke needed every last point. Kyle Filipowski, Mark Mitchell, Duke knocked down some clutch free throws, and all season long, I'm going to talk a little bit later about, some of the struggles this team has on offense. But one of the few places where Duke is a really, really good team on offense is free throw shooting. We're one of the best teams in the country. And in those final 5 minutes, when we need it, this Duke team, like I said, 85% is a huge number. Sam, what you got in the good?
I think on that topic, we've been a little worried that Kyle Filipowski is hitting the freshman wall or entering into a bit of a slump, or maybe he's regressing in some way. I actually think that it's a sign of maturity that he's like, all right, a couple of the shots aren't falling. He's still creating offense. He's still like terrifying opposing teams, drawing a lot of fouls and making free throws. So as much as I wish he was, hitting 45% of his shots as opposed to 30, that'd be great. But if instead of that, he's making opposing teams nervous and opening up spaces for Dariq Whitehead to make shots, for Tyrese Proctor to make shots, for Ryan Young to turn into, this like monster super senior that he is, then I'm totally fine with that. And hopefully it means that Filipowski eventually finds his shot again in, you know, within the flow of this hopefully improved offense. So I liked that. Jason, you met the other thing that I was really hot on this game, Jason, you mentioned at the top was Ryan Young's passing. It has gone from he can do this occasionally to he leads the team in assists in this game. And especially with Jeremy Roach out and Tyrese Proctor not as far along, I think, on the offensive end as John Shire would like. It's incredible that Duke has a guy like Ryan Young who can, one, offensive rebound into passes, but two, can also accept entry passes or high post passes and conduct the offense basically from the middle of the floor.
So Ryan Young's old man game creates a lot of passing lanes. If you think about it, there's one play, which was my favorite play of the game, where his old man game created an open lane for someone to drive on backdoor cut and to get 2 points out of it and one. So it's funny because we talk about how his game has been shifted and he can make these kind of dream shake moves to get open to take shots, but also those dream shakes create passing lanes for him so that if he can't take the shot, someone else can fill that space and he can get it to him.
And as you point out, Donald, now his scoring arsenal, there's enough tape that says that you have to defend him in a lot of different ways, which I don't think was really part of the game plan. Even when he was at Northwestern, you didn't have to like send a second big man in to potentially lock him up in case he, you know, went up and under with the ball. Now he's so good at that teams have to start considering doubling Ryan Young and leaving open the Duke shooters who hopefully have more open shots like Dariq Whitehead had early in the game to knock down threes and then make things difficult for opposing defenses. That's what forced Boston College to go to the zone, which I don't think they really wanted to do. But because they were giving up those easy passes and those easy threes, they sort of had to adjust. You have to like that Duke is forcing that on opposing teams.
You know, one of the other, you guys are talking about Ryan Young's passing. One of the other stats from this game, we talked about the free throw shooting that really worked in Duke's favor, was we were getting good assists. The Duke finishes this game with 15 assists on 21 made field goals. That's a 71% assist rate. That's the second best assist rate that we've had in any game this season. I mean, that's really, really impressive for this Duke team. And a fair number of those were passes that ended up with Dariq Whitehead either taking a three-pointer or penetrating. We saw Dariq Whitehead adding that sort of off the dribble game to what he's already shown us. He's shown us he's been, hitting from three lately, and now he's adding a little bit of penetration and taking the ball to the hoop. He still disappeared for long stretches, and we're going to talk a little bit later about that missed dunk. Oh boy, are we going to talk about that missed dunk? But Whitehead has to be something that we put in the good, alongside Ryan Young and all the passing.
Yeah, I think also someone that we really need to shout out is Mark Mitchell.
Amen.
Mark Mitchell.
Yes.
Mark Mitchell, Coach Shire, after the game, started out by, Mark Mitchell was the player that was called in for post-game press conferences, and he started out by just praising his effort on both ends of the floor. 14 points, 4 or 6 from the field, 6 or 7 from the free throw line. Again, some of his free throws were down the stretch. 6 rebounds. He drew 5 fouls. He had 3 blocks, including the most important one that came in the final minute of the basketball game that helped preserve the victory. So he was all over the end. He was very active. And, where I said we needed the energy on the road, he provided that energy that was necessary, especially in the second half when we couldn't get a bucket. He was still trying to figure out a way to get to the line to get points. And so, or at least feed the energy so that we can get a stop on defense. And while we went 9 minutes without, making a basket from the field, it wasn't like Boston College was lighting it up either. Like our defense was still pretty good at stretches, and it was because of the energy presented by guys like Mark Mitchell.
Guys, as we wrap up the good, I do want to mention one more thing, which is that Duke got a road win. And we sort of, we joked about it at the top, but that's a big deal. I looked throughout the rest of the ACC. There are a lot of teams in the ACC that do not have a road win on the season. A lot of teams in the ACC. Pitt has 2 road wins at NC State and at Syracuse. Clemson, 3 road wins at Georgia Tech, at Virginia Tech, and at Pitt. Huge game. Clemson beat Pitt by 1 point yesterday. Miami has 2 road wins at Louisville and Notre Dame. I'm not sure those should count. Louisville and Notre Dame are just terrible. Virginia won at Georgia Tech, Duke won at BC, Syracuse won at Louisville. That's it. Rest of the ACC has no road wins. And, we're going to spend a long time talking about the bad. This was a game that Duke should have won much more than 1 point. It should not have been as close as it was. I don't want to sugarcoat any of that. But in the ACC this year, a road win is a road win. And any road win is a good road win. So I think we should not ignore the importance of that.
Despite not being there, I did notice on the telecast that it did seem like the fans in attendance were still very much pro Duke as they were at this game last year. But as you point out, Jason, it's the travel, it's all the sort of home court stuff going on, and late in the game when BC came back from that deficit, you could feel the energy in the building turning even from a distance. So you have to appreciate that, as you said, like Duke was able to make free throws. For a young team to make free throws down the stretch in a game like that is pretty impressive. Again, regardless of the fact that they're playing at Boston College and not at Virginia or NC State or UNC.
One of the things that Mark Mitchell said, one of the first things he said when he was in the press conference was, we as a team wanted to prove that we could win away from Cameron. And I think that's important. These guys wanted to show that they could win on the road and show people like, hey, we're not just a team that's just, you can, pick us off on the road one by one. We got moxie, we got grit, we got fight, and we're going to get these games. And all you got to do is just give us a little confidence, which hopefully last night did.
I wanted to mention one more thing, which is that because this game happened like in the middle of the day for me yesterday, while I was on the mountain, I watched it on replay, which I've had to do for a few games this season. As horrible as the last minute of this game. So I knew once I opened the ESPN app, I knew what the final score was, because unfortunately the place where you go to watch the replays is the same place you go to get the scores. So it like pops up immediately. Yeah. So I've pretty much told myself like I can't avoid spoilers anymore if I'm watching games on delay. But the benefit is that you get to skip a lot of TV time. So I watched this game in like a crisp like hour and 5 minutes. And the last minute of the game, which Jason pre-warned me was going to be horrible to watch, and I think took about 15 minutes, I got through that in about a minute and a half. So
good for you for not enduring the pain of that final minute. I can think of no better segue to the bad, from the good to the bad, than to talk about, oh my God, that final minute. What a nightmare. Gentlemen, I will recount it for you now. Kyle Filipowski makes a great steal. I mean, a huge moment. We're up by 1 point, and they've got the ball, and Flip makes a steal. That's just massive.
Picked his pocket.
Goodbye. A great defensive play. And then Dariq Whitehead misses a wide open dunk. I don't think I've ever seen a guy like with that kind of size. Like he's 6'8". I mean, dunking he's athletic. I've never seen a guy miss a wide open dunk like that.
You have to describe the miss though. It wasn't like he clanged it off the rim. It was a Sprite. He sprited himself. Like if you remember the Sprite commercial where the guy barely dunked, like Grant Hill drinks Sprite, he sprited himself. And that was the most surprising thing. It would have been less surprising if he jumped up and jumped 15 feet in the air and threw it down so hard that it clanged off the back of the rim and the rebound was 37 feet.
Right, he never got there.
It didn't happen. He just didn't make it to the rim.
That's unbelievable that happened. So then Duke gets the ball back. Tyrese Proctor throws the ball through Mark Mitchell's hands. Do we know how to inbound the ball? I don't know. I don't know. Apparently we forgot how to inbound the ball completely. Mark Mitchell makes that incredible block shot, a game-saving play, I think. We get the ball back. We cannot inbound the ball again. It gets knocked around, goes off of Flip's feet, and and they get it back again. I mean, like, it was unbelievable how bad that final minute was. It was just really frustrating. The one good thing in the final minute, of course, is that Kyle Filipowski fights like a demon to get a rebound and get to the line where he makes both those free throws, and then BC couldn't get a decent shot, to get the win, and then we we throw the ball away with half a second left and almost give up a half court. Oh my God, gentlemen, the final minute, terrifying. But we're not going to talk about it yet. We're going to take a commercial break because we got to fit these breaks in someplace. We're going to take a commercial break. When we come back, I'm going to hear from both of you guys about the final minute. We're going to talk about other bad stuff in this game, and we have to award a player of the week. All of that after this break. We're back from the break. I just, before we left, told everyone about the nightmare final minute. We could also probably talk about the nightmare, final 8 or 10 minutes of this game. I'll get to that in a minute. But first, Donald, that final minute, dude, that was no fun to watch, was it?
It was fun. I mean, like, let's not sugarcoat it. That was fun to watch. In the sense that it was fun for people who love pain. And I'm a Detroit Lions fan. I've been used to pain my entire life. So I was not surprised that was happening. I think the one critique that I have, there's a lot of things that went wrong, right? Like I can forgive Dariq Whitehead for missing a dunk. I can forgive guys for throwing the ball away. I can forgive guys for missing free throws, whatever, right? The one thing that you need to do on the last play, if you guys watch the game, you'll see this. Ryan Young was basically at the other baseline. Like after the free throws, they go down, they miss a shot, it goes out of bounds. It's our ball with half a second left. Ryan Young is basically down by our bench, and he's just like waving his hands like, throw it over here to me. Throw it over here to me. Why? Because Ryan Young knows I'm 94 feet away from the basket. If anything happens over here, they're not going to get a shot off with half a second left. And Mark Mitchell, I believe it was, inbounded the ball. And he looked for Ryan Young and threw it about halfway there. Like Ryan Young was about 50 feet away from the play, and he threw it to half court where I believe it was Post caught the ball. And mind you, his shot at the end of the game would not have counted. It went off after the buzzer. But we all saw the 2010 national championship. We don't leave those things to chance. We can't have that. We already have post traumatic stress from that game still, and that was almost 13 years ago. So in those instances, you got to throw the ball deep. Because again, the further away from their basket they are, the less they can do with it. The other thing I would have also been cool with is if he faked a long pass, got the guy defending the pass up in the air, and then just glanced it off their leg, because off their leg, half a second, gone, like done. But the safe play was to not throw it to half court where there was nobody there except for a BC player. It was to throw it all the way down the court to make believe that you're at least trying to get it to Ryan Young and know that, 90 feet away from the basket, they're not going to be able to do anything.
And all of this happens, one half after Duke totally squanders a great, possession opportunity where Duke won the jump. So the possession arrow was in BC's favor. Then BC gets a Duke shot ends up stuck in the rim with 1 second left in the first half. So BC gets the possession. And I thought to myself when it happened, oh, good. In a game that I know is going to be close, it's important that Duke gets the advantage from this because BC's not going to make a shot with a second left out of bounds, which they did. So oops. I was thinking about that the whole second half. I was like, man, that I know Duke ends up winning this game, but that shot could end up, being the difference. And I was still thinking about it when Mark Mitchell made that final inbound.
So we've talked about the final minute. I do want to mention one more thing about that final minute that I thought was really telling, that should be pointed out. With 12 seconds left, after we'd hit the free throws to go up by 1, after Flip hit those big free throws, BC has the ball, and Duke at that point only needs to play defense. I want to be clear. With 12 seconds left, there really isn't going to be another offensive possession. Maybe someone's going to get fouled, but for the most part, you're thinking, I need to get my 5 best defenders on the floor. Are we agreed about that? Yes. I think it is very, very telling that Shire kept Lively's rim protection on the bench and left Ryan Young in the game. Now, I get part of that maybe is wanting a better rebounder, and wanting a more savvy player, more experienced player, one who maybe wouldn't bail out the opposition with a foul. But if Dariq Lively cannot even be counted upon to play better defense than Ryan Young, cannot even be counted upon to be our rim protector on a possession where there's no offense involved at all. Look, we know Ryan Young considerably better on offense than Dariq Lively. But if we aren't even going to say that on a possession where we only need defense that we want Dariq Lively, I got to ask, what is Dariq Lively doing for this team at this point?
I think you needed leadership out there. And Ryan Young, in the absence of Jeremy Roach, was proving to be the leader, at least the vocal leader. He's the guy that's bringing people into huddles. He's the guy that's kind of calming people down, and it feeds into the scoring droughts. There's another thing we want to talk about, but for at least for that play, it seemed like if you needed leadership on the play, he was the guy, because I don't think you throw out 5 freshmen into that mix and hope that they come away with a victory. You need somebody in there to kind of make sure that at least vocally that everyone has their assignments and knows them.
Jason, I'm totally with you on this one. It doesn't make any sense that at this point, with Dariq Lively now supposedly healthy, right? I mean, if he's not healthy, then it's a different thing. But if he's healthy enough to be playing, and this is what we're getting, then it's a huge downer. So yeah, it's super concerning, and it doesn't tell me that he's getting any better.
So there are 17 players in this game. 17 different players played 3 or more minutes. 17 guys. There was only one of those 17 players who did not grab a rebound. I'm going to give you 2 guesses, and the first one doesn't count as to who it was. It was Dariq Lively. It's kind of amazing to me how unproductive this guy is when he's on the floor for someone who is so highly touted. And I was talking to some friends on email, some Duke friends on email about all this, and someone brought up an apt comparison in terms of a guy super highly rated. We're all incredibly excited to have him, and turns out to be an incredibly disappointing player in terms of his production. He said, we got to compare this to Harry Giles. Harry Giles was also a guy considered the number 1 player in his class. And I'm going to give you their stats. They are remarkably similar in terms of lack of production. Harry Giles averaged 3.9 points per game, 3.8 rebounds per game, playing a little over 11 minutes in 2016-17. Dariq Lively is playing almost 17 minutes per game, a little more playing time, but only 3.8 points per game, 3.5 rebounds per game. Less than 4 points in rebounds, the same as Harry Giles. Yes, Dariq Lively's blocking more shots, but man, it doesn't feel like Lively's game is progressing. It doesn't feel like Whitehead, we talked about, is getting better. He's becoming the player we expected him to be. Lively, just nothing. A guy, it's kind of, it's scary in terms of what Duke's ceiling in, because we think that Lively should be part of that ceiling.
And Jason, I made this comparison a couple of weeks ago, and you said, like, let's not jump to conclusions, because like the Harry Giles thing was about injuries and whatever. Yeah. At this point, it might be worse than that, because like I don't know that Lively has the same excuses left that Harry Giles had at this point in his freshman season.
Lively has made 22 baskets this year. 19 of them are dunks. And that's the reason why, is he hasn't developed that outside of 2 feet. And they said the other 3 baskets were lay-ins within 3 feet of the basket. So he hasn't developed something to make teams want to go, oh, I need to come out and guard him. I just need to wait around the rim to see if he's going to try and, do an alley-oop or grab a loose rebound, which he hasn't really been grabbing rebounds. And that's where he was getting a lot of those dunks as well, was putbacks where he grabbed the rebound and went straight back up and dunked it. So he has to figure out a way to get guys to want to guard him, because if they're not, they're just going to start guarding someone else. And that's when you get guys in the double teams down in the paint, like Cal Filipowski.
All right, I want to get away from Dariq Lively and get to the scoring droughts, because that's something we really need to talk about. The offensive drought this team suffers is a huge source of concern. I mean, literally only days after we got skunked for like the first 10 minutes against NC State, we do the same thing at the end of the game against BC. 1 field goal in the final 10 minutes of this contest that was a driving layup by Kyle Filipowski with about a minute and 40 seconds left. And recall, gentlemen, that we had the exact same thing happen against Purdue earlier this season, where we were scoreless for the entire final 7 minutes of the game. This is a contest where we hit just 29% of our shots in the second half. And I wish I had the stats to break it down from the first, 10 minutes of the second half and the second 10 minutes of the second half, because I think we were way below 29% the final 10 minutes of this game. I mean, it's the offensive droughts, Donald, they're a thing that this team needs to fix.
Yeah, I think it was from the 9:08 mark in the second half to like the 1:57 mark in the second half. We didn't score a basket. We only made free throws during that point. I think we only made 1 basket from the 9:08 mark, or I'm sorry, from the 11:08 mark, all the way to the end. We only made one basket. There's something that I've been talking about with friends that's kind of been interesting when we get in these scoring droughts, and we get them in just about every game. Right now, at this point in the season, we're on January 8th, we haven't figured out who our go-to scorer is going to be.
Oh, we've talked about this. Yeah.
Yeah, we've talked about it, but it festered yesterday. It festered against NC State, where whenever we need a basket or we need a stop or we need something good to happen, we can't look at one person and go, there's our guy. He's going to get it done. Last year, no matter what happened, we could look at Paulo and say, Paulo's going to do something, right? He could make a pass. He could make a shot. He can stop somebody in defense. He was going to do something to affect us in a positive way, to get us out of our rut and get us the momentum that we need.
Or Wendell Moore. We talked about this.
Or Wendell Moore.
Yeah.
But I mean, what I'm saying is even Wendell Moore last year looked to Paulo first, and knowing that, yes, Wendell can be a scorer in the postseason. Jeremy Roach could be a go-to scorer, but we knew who the guy was that was going to be the catalyst for it. And even if he wasn't the catalyst, he knew to find somebody to make it work. And literally every single time we're in a scoring drought, it seems like the team is looking around to see who's going to be the guy to break it, instead of them all looking at one guy and saying, he's going to do something positive on this play. He's going to get this stop. He's going to get this block. He's going to hit this three. He's going to drive the lane and find the open man. Whatever that positive thing is, we haven't seen it from the same person every single time. Like as you mentioned yesterday, Mark Mitchell made the play on defense, and then Kyle Filipowski made the free throws on offense. As freshmen, we don't have one of these freshmen who have taken over at points. And as good as Dariq Whitehead is becoming, he hasn't taken over yet. And maybe he's going to be the guy, but we haven't figured that out yet. And even with Jeremy Roach in the game, and it seems like he's going to be out for at least a little bit because of his toe injury. When he was in the game, he wasn't the go-to scorer. He may have been the guy to kind of run the point and bring the ball up, but he wasn't the guy that everyone in the other team was like, oh, wait, got a key in on this guy. He's gonna score. So I think that's the interesting thing about this team, and that's probably why we get into so many of these droughts, because it feels like everyone thinks that they can do it. But when the chips are down and our backs are against the wall, they're looking in the huddle, and I don't think they're looking at the same guy as to who's going to be the guy to get us out of this mess.
The other thing that's challenging, especially with Roach out, is that initiating the offense is really challenging for this team. Tyrese Proctor doesn't have it yet. I don't know if he's going to develop it by the end of the season, but whether he's bringing the ball up the floor, whether it's someone like Mark Mitchell getting the rebound and then realizing the fast break, as soon as Duke is sort of in the half court, there's no offensive creativity going on. There's a lot of Proctor taking two aggressive steps into the lane and then running back out again, which doesn't do anything. It doesn't make the defense nervous. It doesn't create chances for guys to come off screens or get open in any way. He's just running around with the ball. So that's I don't know what the answer is to that. I think the situation at point guard while Jeremy Roach is out, it feels like John Shire wants to keep giving Proctor chances to win the job, to have the juice to be able to bring the ball up the court every time. But Proctor doesn't seem quite up to that task. I don't think John Shire wants Jalen Blakes to be the point guard, which is why I assume he wasn't starting in this game, is that he's all right, I want to give Proctor a little more leash, see what happens here, because the coaching staff is still testing out how the offense works on this team, especially if Filipowski is not automatic, if he's getting double teamed and stuff. We talked in earlier about how great it is that Ryan Young is making all these shots. Ryan Young making all these shots is not the plan. It's a weird positive byproduct of what's going on, but it's not the plan. The plan is that Tyrese Proctor is getting guys open, and that's not happening right now.
Well, and the thing I noticed in this game was that Duke very rarely made a skip pass. All our passes were to the next guy, the guy who was right next to you, which doesn't cause the defense to move very much.
And the skip passes that Duke did make were scary.
They were, yeah.
BC also at a certain point, they realized, just like we realized, nobody on the court was going to make a 3-pointer. So they did zone for a while. So that's where, skip passes aren't going to necessarily work in the zone because you just have a guy that's standing there. But what you can do is make passes into the lane. And I think what we didn't utilize was that free throw line area that we did so well with Matthew Hurt, right? Like Matthew Hurt, when we had a zone, he would just step right up to the free throw line. He'd take the ball and turn around and go, either I'm going to shoot it and you're going to be disappointed in the outcome because it's going in, or I can find somebody on the wing for a 3-pointer and you're also going to be disappointed because we got some great 3-point shooters. So like that process didn't work out. And I don't think that, I think, this is probably the first time that a zone was used extensively against us because they figured out we can't shoot the ball for a long stretch. But I think that's going to be something they need to work on, is how to pass out of a zone. Skip passes are good in a man-to-man, but they're not always great in a zone. And you need to figure out where the open passing lanes are and get people to fill those holes. That wasn't happening yesterday.
So I want to mention a couple of things that'll tie together everything you guys have been talking about. The first one is talking about Tyrese Proctor and the 3-pointers, and Donald talking about getting 3-pointers. I mean, they were just leaving Tyrese Proctor wide open from the perimeter. They were in no way afraid of him taking a 3-point shot. He hit 2 of 5 in this game, which is good. Obviously I'll take 40%. By hitting 2 of 5, he still is less than 25%. He's at 24% 3-pointers in the season. Teams are not even bothering to guard him out there. On the game, he's just 2 of 10 shooting overall, 3 assists, and I don't recall a single one of those assists being a really creative pass. And then the other guy, by the way, and Tyrese Proctor, like everybody in Duke, we had trouble with turnovers, and Proctor was not immune from that. Duke had 15 turnovers in this game. Do you guys know, in ACC games, I looked this up, our ACC statistics, Duke's turning the ball over more than 20% of our possessions. We're like the 3rd worst team in the ACC in terms of turnover possession. Like Louisville is worse than us, and I'm not even sure who else. That 20% is a big number for your turnover percentage. For Duke to be doing that in ACC games is just deadly. And then the other thing I wanted to tie back to what you guys were talking about earlier, Sam, you were talking about needing a go-to guy. And who would that be? I thought that maybe eventually on this team that was going to be Dariq Whitehead. I want to recount for you guys. I've been doing a lot of this. Hey, let's run down a list of of what happened. I'm going to run down a list for you of what Dariq Whitehead's final 8 minutes were like in this game. With 8:43 left, Dariq Whitehead hit 2 free throws. Here's what he did the rest of the way. He commits an offensive foul. He missed a 3-pointer. He missed another 3-pointer. He missed a jumper. He missed a dunk. He went 0 for 4 with a turnover in the final 8 minutes. If that's your go-to guy, that's a good way to lose the game.
I mean, yeah. Again, I think that's partly why people are looking and saying, who is going to be the guy? Who's going to step up and be the guy to calm everyone down with a good play? And then, Jason, doesn't have to be a shot, right? It doesn't have to be, like, again, the clutch play yesterday was a block and 2 free throws. Like, it can be whatever it needs to be to win the game, but it needs to be someone who consistently, whenever they are called upon to do something positive to help stem momentum and kind of turn the tide a little bit, that person delivers over and over and over. Yesterday, again, it was Mark Mitchell down the stretch on defense. It was Kyle Filipowski at the free throw line. Who's it going to be next game? And I think that's where teams, one case is hard for teams to plan for that, like who's going to be the guy they're going to give the ball to down the stretch, because it could be anybody. But at the same time, for Duke, it's also probably very concerning that they don't have a go-to guy yet. And I think it's going to come. But the question is, who's it going to be?
All right, Sam, wrap up the bad for me.
I wanted to switch to talking about the defense a little bit. We got an email from listener Joe 4, who is responding to something that who was responding to something that I think I mentioned a lot early in the season, which is that I think defense is going to be the calling card for this team. He says, I know defense was supposed to be a hallmark for this team, and it was generally pretty solid today at BC. But is it just me, or do we have really, really awful double teaming in the post? Like half-hearted, poorly positioned double teams that left the dribbler plenty of space to dribble out or through or kick out. Mark Mitchell seemed to be the worst offender of this. And I think it's a good point that when Duke is trying to double team, and this only applies, by the way, when they're, when they're playing the man to man, because when they're in the zone, I think they've gotten a lot better at playing the zone. I don't think they're great at it yet, but when they're in this man to man and they're trying to double in the post, it seems like they're doing it without knowing like the impact that it's going to have on the rest of the defensive assignments. Boston College is not a great offensive team. You know, they don't have like tons of playmakers all over the place, but they did manage during that stretch to to find open guys out of that double team. So I think it's an astute observation.
Yeah, it feels like token defense, like you would play in practice when you're trying to simulate, hey, if this defense comes over and they double team you in the post, here are the lanes that are open. Here's what you want to do. It definitely, they need to go over there, sprint over there, and have their hands up. And one thing that not just Duke players, but just college basketball in general has kind of went away from is guys with hands up in the passing lane and having 5 guys with their hands up in the air to, simulate a forest of trees. And we have the tall guys that if we all put our hands up in the lane, ain't nobody getting through the lane, whether they're dribbling, passing, or shooting, nothing's happening in the lane. But it feels like players aren't taught to do that anymore. And because of that, Sam, you have this situation where even if there is a double team, guys can dribble around it and they can dribble out of it. And there's not an option. There is several options still for them, as opposed to when a double team used to happen, there would be no option other than to go backwards, maybe. And that's where I think, again, energy plays into that as well, because if you're sprinting over instead of jogging over, that double team takes place quicker and maybe forces them into making a bad decision.
All right, guys, we got to wrap things up. It's time for our play of the game. Donald, I'll come to you first. You already teased it. What's your play of the game?
So around 5 minutes left in the first half, Ryan Young, again, he did a dream shake to kind of get open. And instead of shooting, he found Mark Mitchell on the baseline and fed it to him. And Mark Mitchell got a dunk where it was slapped. Basically, his arms were slapped into the backboard, and he still was able to basically kiss the backboard with the ball and then dunk it. And he got the and one and made the free throw to make it 29-21. That was my play of the game.
Sam, what do you have?
I had one like that, which is Whitehead passed down to. This was also in the first half. Whitehead passed down to Ryan Young in the post. He made a little move and then sent it right back out to Whitehead for a clean 3-pointer. I love the execution on that. I hope we get to see that more. The other play that I had was, because I know I've dogged on Tyrese Proctor, but he did have a classic John Shire inbound, get the ball right back and hit the corner 3, which I love to see. And I assume that John Shire also loves when guys make that play.
So my play of the game, Sam, you mentioned it. I love the pass by Young back out to Whitehead on the 3-pointer. In reality, my player of the game was almost all of Dariq Whitehead's 3-pointers in the first half. I just think that the way he elevates on his 3-point shot, it's really difficult to defend. He's getting it off very quickly. He seems incredibly confident. He didn't come in with the reputation of a guy who's going to hit a lot of threes, but man, past few games, he really looks like he can do it. That should probably segue us pretty nicely into the player of the week as we wrap things up. And I'm going to go ahead and start with mine. I think Dariq Whitehead is the player of the week. His 3-point shooting this week, at least gave Duke a little bit of hope against NC State. And then absolutely gave Duke the lead that we had to cling to desperately against Boston College. And, it's been a long time coming, but Dariq Whitehead to me was the player of the week, finally, something that we probably would have expected from him earlier in the season. Sam, who you got?
I see your Dariq Whitehead. I'll take Ryan Young, the other guy who was effective for most of this game and at least was scoring against NC State, which is not something we can say for everybody. So I'll take Ryan Young.
Donald?
I'm glad you guys picked those two, because I was leaning towards Dariq Whitehead, but I'm actually going to go with Mark Mitchell. I'm a guy who's been telling you energy is the key to a lot of our success. And man, Mark Mitchell brought energy. And even against NC State, he had some energy, but really against Boston College's energy was the difference in the ball game. So I'm going to go with Mark Mitchell.
And with that, we're going to wrap it up here on 475 of the Duke Basketball Report podcast. I know that ordinarily you would expect us to do a preview of Duke's next contest, a very, very big game against the Pitt Panthers. We're going to wait on that. We're going to get that to you probably on Tuesday, right ahead of the Pitt game. It is a hugely important game, and we want to, spend some time really digging into the Pitt Panthers.
It's going to be a huge week because, Pitt and Clemson, as you mentioned, played yesterday. Those were the top two teams in the ACC. We see both of them this week. So strap in, ladies and gentlemen. We get Pitt at home on Wednesday. We'll focus on that. And then it's off to Clemson and Littlejohn, where traditionally has been fun to play down there.
Yeah, and by the way, I am headed to that Clemson game. It's just a 2-hour drive from Atlanta, and I've got press passes, so I'll be sitting on press row. I'll hopefully bring you guys, some snippets from the locker room after the game and that kind of stuff. But again, that's going to wrap it up for us here on episode 475 of the Duke Basketball Report podcast. He is Sam. He is Donald. I am Jason. This is the Duke Band to play us out and take us home.
Let me give you a big Labor Day surprise. Most people think if we all exercise the same and eat the same, we'd all look the same. And let me tell you why that's wrong. Your body is unique and your metabolism is unique. I'm Lacey Green and I'm a super trainer at Body. That's BODI.com. And you can't see me, but I don't look like your average personal trainer. I'm curvy and I'm proud of it. So I created a program for beginners only on the Body app to show people like us how to get incredible results and be our version of happy and healthy. This isn't just workout videos. It's people like you and me. It's community. It's incredible trainers. It's easy to follow nutrition and mindset experts to help you reduce stress and just feel better. And you can get started with my new program called For Beginners Only. Now, here's the big surprise. If you go to body.com right now, that's BODI.com, not only can you get everything Body has to offer at 50% off with an annual membership, you'll also get an additional 20% off, but only during Labor Day weekend. Let's do this together. Go to body.com. That's body with an I.com.